Hi everyone, my name is Brenna. Welcome to Shell Magic, presented by the Whaling Museum and Education Center of Cold Spring Harbor. Today we're going to be talking about seashells. Do we have any seashell fans here? Has anybody ever gone down to the beach and collected seashells? Maybe taken a look and kind of wondered about these really cool things that wash up on the shore. There are so many different kinds of seashells out there. There are small ones, there are spiky ones, smooth ones. They come in different sizes, shapes, colors. Have you ever wondered about what they are? Have you ever maybe made up a little story in your minds about where they come from or what kind of story they might have had before they made their way onto the beach? People have been fascinated by seashells for thousands of years. And they've come up with all different kinds of stories to explain these really cool little things that we find by the ocean. A lot of people believe that seashells have some magic in them and have the ability to bring that magic into our lives. So today, we're going to be discovering how seashells have been used for magical and meaningful ways for years. We're going to learn how to identify different kinds of seashells. And then we're going to design a special seashell-inspired charm of our own. Are you guys ready to get started? Great, let's go. We're going to start by talking about the power of nature. The ocean is a pretty spectacular place. If you've ever gone down to the beach and just been amazed at the waves and how big it is, you're not alone. People have been looking at the ocean and marveling at it for thousands of years. They think this incredibly huge body of water with its powerful waves and storms is a thing of wonder and magic. Thousands of years ago, people used to believe that there were different kinds of gods and goddesses that were specifically connected to the ocean. And some people, when they saw seashells at the beach, they thought that these were little bits and pieces of that magic of the ocean washed ashore. And many of them believed that if they took these shells and they brought them into their own lives, they could capture a little bit of that magic, a little bit of the power of the gods and goddesses that they thought lived out at sea. Now, today, many of us don't believe in gods and goddesses of the ocean anymore. But a lot of people still do believe that seashells have good luck, and they try to find ways of bringing seashells into their lives to make that luck last a little bit longer. We're going to learn about some of the ways today. But first, we have to answer a very important question. And that is, what exactly are seashells? Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever wondered what seashells are? Maybe you know already, but maybe you don't. It took me a long time to learn what seashells are. To me, when I first started finding them at the beach, they looked like little pieces of stone, little pieces of really colorful, thin rock. And I didn't know what they were. But it turns out that seashells, they're not stone at all. They are the exoskeletons of a certain group of animals called mollusks. Mollusks are animals like snails that you see here that have their skeletons on the outside of their body. I said the word exoskeleton, right? So people like us, humans, other animals like us, cats, dogs, they have skeletons inside their body, right? Inside each of our limbs, inside of our heads, inside of our bodies, there are bones that make our bodies strong, that help protect us, and we carry them inside. But some animals like mollusks, they have this protective skeleton on the outside of their bodies. And that's all a seashell is. Now there are different kinds of mollusks, right? We've got our friend the snail here. Other mollusks include animals like clams. Maybe you've eaten a clam before, or mussels or oysters. These are all different kinds of mollusks. You see there's the clam inside the shell. Now, it gets a little bit tricky because there are some mollusks, some animals that belong to that family that don't grow shells at all. One of these animals is the octopus. You see the octopus here? Octopuses, they're mollusks too, just like clams and snails. But do octopuses have seashells? Nope. Nope, they're kind of, they're on their own. They don't grow seashells, but they still belong to the same family of animals. Now, to make things even more confusing, there are some animals out there who live inside of seashells, but they're not mollusks and they don't grow those shells themselves. Does anybody know what kind of animal I'm talking about? Well, hermit crabs are a great example of this. Hermit crabs, you can see this guy here. This guy is living inside of a seashell, but a hermit crab doesn't grow a seashell. A hermit crab has an exoskeleton, but that exoskeleton you can see right here on its limbs. This seashell that the crab is living in, it didn't grow it. That crab found that seashell on the beach and moved in and made that seashell a home. But another animal had grown that seashell before, and just like you and I find shells that wash up on the beach, that crab just found that empty shell washed up and decided to move in. So even though that crab is living inside a seashell, it is not a mollusk. So let's learn a little bit more about what mollusks are. Mollusks, those animals, if you find a seashell, the animals that grow seashells, they can generally be broken down into two different categories. They are either a gastropod or a bivalve. Now, these are big words and they're weird words and you may never have heard them before, but it's really easy to tell them apart, okay? So a gastropod is a kind of mollusk like a snail that grows one single shell. A bivalve, like a clam, here's a giant clam here, is a kind of mollusk that grows two different matching shells. Let's look a little bit more closely. Here are some gastropod shells. They all look completely different, right? There are some that are smooth, some that are spiky, some that look kind of big, some of them are really tiny, but they all have one thing in common. They're all one shell, one whole shell that grows in a spiral. Do you guys see the spirals in some of these shells? It's really easy to think about a snail shell. It grows in that spiral. Well, that's because the animal that lived inside it, the gastropod, it grew that shell over time. The shell got bigger and bigger as the animal grew. And so the shell started off in the center of that spiral as a tiny little shell, and the animal just kept adding to it and adding to it and adding to it as it got older. I've got part of a gastropod shell here. It's a little hard to see because most of the shell has broken away over the years. I found this on the beach. But what you can see is that spiral. You can see that spiral right in the center of the shell. And you can also see how that spiral continues all the way down deep. So this shell would have been one of those big shells that you could have listened to the ocean in. But all that remains now is that central spiral. You can also see that this spiral, it's pretty strong, right? The rest of the shell has sort of cracked away, but that spiral is really strong. And that's good because the animal, the gastropod that lives inside this shell, it's using that shell for protection, right? Think of a snail. A snail can poke its head out of the shell. It can go looking for food. It can move around. But when a snail gets scared, it will shrink back inside the shell and hide. And that's what the gastropod uses its shell for. It shrinks back, and the deeper it goes, the stronger the shell is and the safer the animal is inside. So if you find a shell on the beach and it has a spiral, what kind of animal is it? It's a gastropod, absolutely. But there are other shells that you find on the beach, like bivalve shells. Let's talk about those. This is another image of a clam shell. But again, there are oysters and mussels, different kinds of bivalves, scallops. The one thing that makes them the same is that bivalves grow two different shells that are almost identical, but that fit together, right? So it's kind of like a book opening. These are clam shells that I've got in my hands here, and they belong to the same animal. And once upon a time, they would have been connected. When the animal still lived inside the shell, there would have been a mussel connecting the two shells together, and the animal lived inside. So when you think of the word bivalve, think of the word like bicycle, right? 2 different wheels. Bivalve has got 2 different shells, and the animal lives inside. Now, just like a gastropod, a bivalve uses its shells for protection, so it can open up its shells if it wants to eat or if it wants to move. But if there's a predator, if it's worried, it can close its shells and hide inside until everything is safe again. Now, because the animal needs to be living inside the shell for the 2 halves to be connected, it usually is more common for you to find only 1 shell like this on the beach. It's hard to find them 2 connected when no one else is living inside. So usually you just find 1, but if you find 1 shell and there's no spiral, what kind of animal does it belong to? That's right, a bivalve. So now that we know how to tell the difference, let's learn a little bit more about what people thought these shells could do for your life as lucky charms. Well, people really thought that shells had to do with the moon and the tides, right? They're from the ocean. And the moon, as you may know, is what creates high and low tides. When the moon is close to Earth, the gravity from the moon pulls the ocean up so that a high tide is created. And people thought that if you had a seashell, some of that ability to draw in powerful energy stayed with the shell. Some of the same thing that the moon did, the seashell would be able to do. But instead of drawing in the ocean, it would draw in good luck into your life. One kind of luck that people wanted to draw into their life was love. If you were in love with someone, you might want to use a seashell to bring that luck into your own life. Now, people thought that seashells were associated with love for a very good reason. Thousands of years ago in ancient Greece, the people that lived there believed in an ocean goddess called Aphrodite. Aphrodite was the goddess of beauty, of love, and of the ocean. The word aphros in ancient Greek meant foam, like Aphrodite. So she was made out of sea foam. And the legend was that when she was born in the middle of the ocean, she sailed into land on a clamshell. So one story that people used to tell themselves was that if you found the shells of a clam, of a bivalve, that were still stuck together even when they were empty, that could be useful as a luck charm for bringing in love. You would write the name of the person you loved on a piece of paper and put it inside those 2 bivalve shells. And then that would help to make sure that just like those shells were connected, you would become connected with the person you love. So if anybody has a crush on anybody, you can try this out yourself. Go to the beach and find 2 shells that are connected and write the name of the person you like inside and see what happens. Another kind of luck people thought shells could bring them was prosperity, wealth. Think about money. Seashells used to be used as currency. Long before people made money out of coins or bills like we do today, people would trade shells back and forth as money. These shells that you see here in the picture, these are cowrie shells, which is a type of seashell. And they are the oldest form of money known in the entire world. People used this as money thousands of years ago. And today, if you go to a different country, if you've ever been to Canada or somewhere else, Mexico, you know that they use different kinds of money there. Each country has its own money, and if you want to spend money in a different place, you have to change money. You have to change your money into a different kind of money to spend it there. Well, thousands of years ago, cowrie shells were so valuable that no matter where you were in the ancient world, you could use them for money. You could have them and use them in Africa. You could travel to Asia and use the same cowrie shells for money. You could use them all over the Pacific. You could even use them in some parts of Europe. So they were really, really valuable. Because of that, people thought that cowrie shells could be used to bring money into their lives. You can see the cowrie shells here. Some people thought that if you took a cowrie shell and you put it in your pocket or in your purse or wherever you kept your money, that shell would be able to draw in more wealth into your life. So if you guys are able to get your hands on a cowrie shell, try it yourself. Put it into your wallet or into your piggy bank and see if that brings in more money. Maybe it still works. Another thing people used shells to bring into their lives was peace. Here in North America, on the eastern coast, the Native Americans that lived here long before European settlers came, they used the shells that they found on the shores of Long Island and New England to make special beads called wampum. You see them here. These purple and white beads were made from whelks and quahogs, two types of gastropods and bivalves that lived in the shores off of New England and New York. These shells were gathered and they were very, very carefully crafted into the beautiful beads that you see here, and then woven together to form belts and shawls and purses and shoes. And for a long time, people in America, we thought that when Native Americans were giving these beads back and forth, they used it like money, like cowrie shells. But historians now have talked to those Native people, and they believe that what actually was being done was these shells were being given as gifts in important ceremonies. So if you had two groups of people who maybe had been fighting for a long time, you would bring them together and they would agree on peace. And then they would weave beads of wampum together into a belt as an agreement that they would no longer fight between their two groups of people. And so because of that, you get some people who believe that if you take these same shells that were made into these beads, the whelk, which is where you get the white beads from, this is a gastropod, like a snail, and the quahog, the purple beads, that's a type of clam, a bivalve. If you find those shells and you bring them into your life, maybe you'll bring some peace along with you. This is another great image of an actual wampum belt that was used as part of a peace treaty. So now that you know that seashells were used throughout time for many, many different types of luck, we're going to make ourselves a seashell charm of our own. Okay, we're going to do this using materials that we have at home. Because I know a lot of people aren't going out today, and sometimes you don't live near a beach, so I want to make sure that everyone has the chance to bring in luck no matter where they live. First, we need to ask ourselves a question. What kind of luck do you want in your life? Do you want to create a luck charm? Do you want money? Do you want happiness and peace? Think about that as we get started. To do this craft, you need certain materials, okay? You need paper, scissors, tape, and markers or crayons, something to decorate your shell with. Now, if you happen to have glitter or sequins or stickers, that's great. You can use that at the end of the craft to decorate your shell even more, but you don't need those. All you really need are paper, scissors, tape, and markers or crayons or colored pencils. I just wouldn't use paint for this particular type of craft. Okay? So we're going to do this craft together, okay? So to get started, let's start with step one. I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger so that you can see me better. And for step one, you're going to need a piece of paper, right? So I'm going to get my piece of paper here. You're going to get yours too. And all we have to do is fold it in half first. So we're going to take the piece of paper here. We're going to fold it in half like this. Not like that. We're going to fold it in half that way, widthwise, okay? Once you've got it folded in half, you're going to make a crease, just like that. Now this is important as we do our craft. We've got the paper folded like that. The folded side, that's going to be the bottom of your craft, okay? So you want to make sure that the open side stays the top, the folded side is the bottom. Step two. Choose your charm. What kind of charm do you want? Do you want love? Good luck? Do you want money? I chose joy and happiness because I think that that's a really fun thing to bring into my life, and I'm going to do that too. So once you've decided what you want to write that word down on one side of your paper, remembering that the folded side is the bottom, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and write joy again because I think that that's a pretty good thing to bring into my life. But again, you can choose love, you can choose money, you can choose peace. Maybe you're fighting with a friend and you need some peace. You can also make more than one shell. So if you need a lot of different kinds of luck, you can make one at a time. I've got joy there. Once you've figured out what you want your charm to be and you write it on one side, we're going to move on to step three. Turn your paper over. You've got the word on one side, turn it over, keeping the fold at the bottom, and decorate the other side however you want. I'm just going to draw, I think, a couple of lines because I'm not that artistic. But if you are super artistic, you can draw swirls like are in that picture. You can draw polka dots, you can draw stars, you can draw an entire beach scene. Maybe you're really good at drawing and you want to draw an entire ocean scene on your seashell. Whatever you want, that's what you should draw. If you have glitter and sequins and stickers, I wouldn't use them to decorate right now, just because we're going to fold this paper later and it's going to be kind of hard to fold if you have things that are raised, things that are three-dimensional that you put on. So right now for your design, all I would do is draw with markers or crayons or colored pencils or whatever you have to decorate, and then worry about glitter and sequins all the way at the very end of this craft. So once you can spend as much time as you want on this, by the way. You can spend a good long time decorating. The more effort you put into your charm, I think the more likely it is to work. I've just got a bunch of lines on mine, but I think it'll still end up looking pretty cool. Once you've got it decorated, we're gonna move on. See, look at here, a bunch of nice swirls. The next step is to take your decorated piece of paper and fold it in half again. Now remember, again, this is really important. The fold, that's on the bottom. The open side, that's on the top. Now I'm going to fold it in half again, like that. You see, widthwise. We're going to fold it in half again, so that the first folded side is still on the bottom, the open ends are towards the top, and then we've got a new folded side here, which is going to be the middle. What we're going to do, we want to create a seashell shape out of this piece of paper. So we're going to draw an arc on the shell and cut it out. Now this is very important. You want to make sure that the high point of the arc, right here, you see I've drawn that? It's kind of like a little bit of like a smiley face almost. The high point is near that fold, right? And then the low point is near the second part of the open piece. Remember, the whole thing is open there. Got another fold, the high point is there, low point is there. We're going to cut together along this arc. Cut! So that when I unfold it, it looks like that. You see, there's a picture there on the screen. I've just done it there as well. You want that rounded bit, because that's what's going to make it look like a seashell. Okay? Remember, keeping the folded side at the bottom. Once you've done that, it's time to make another series of folds. We're going to make some accordion folds, back and forth. What do I mean by this? Well, basically, you can see the picture here. You fold the paper in one direction, and then fold it in the other. And so you kind of go back and forth and back and forth. I'm going to show you what this looks like in real time. So I'm going to fold this first end over towards you, right? And make a crease. And then I'm going to fold it backwards towards me and make another crease. And then once again, fold it forwards towards you and make a crease. And then backwards towards me and make another crease. And so you can see as I go along, there's going to be like little accordion folds. It looks like, have you ever seen an accordion being played? That's what it looks like. So we're going to do this the entire length of the shell. I'm using the table. It's really useful if you've got some sort of flat surface because it'll help you make those creases nice and even. You can also make these creases teeny tiny, or you can make them big and wide. Different creases will make for a different looking type of shell. And it'll just make for, you know, different kinds of shells, different kinds of designs. So I have creased the whole length of my paper, right? Back and forth. And now what I'm going to do is tape it together. I need a piece of tape. I'm going to use that tape and tape it along the bottom of my shell. So I'm going to put the tape on one side here. and then fold it over right along the bottom and put it on the other side there. And then we've got our seashell. Then we just kind of fold it open, even it out, and you've got your charm. You can make as many as you want to bring in all kinds of different luck into your life and, you know, bring in wealth, happiness, love, whatever you want. Make a whole bunch. And I hope that they work for you. I hope you've enjoyed this craft. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. I hope that next time you're down by the seashore, you think of all of the different shells that you find. You try to figure out which ones are bivalves, which ones are gastropods. And then I also want you to use your imagination. Think of all the stories that people have been telling for hundreds of years and see if you can come up with a story of your own. Maybe you can come up with a whole different kind of luck that these shells might bring. And then also remember to keep this close to you. If you've made a charm, see if it really works. See if it brings luck into your life. Well, again, I hope you've had fun. Thanks so much for coming. We have all kinds of different ideas. If you want any more, you can visit our museum's website, cshwhalingmuseum.org, to learn more. You can also, I'm sure, talk to your library because they have a bunch of really excellent skills and crafts and activities for you to do. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a great summer. Once again, my name is Brenna, and thanks so much for coming to Shell Magic. Bye, guys.